be made up by Mr. Carlos Castro, Manager Corporate Affairs South America from Glencore as moderator. And as panel members, we will have Mr. Derek Coop, President of Sociedad Minera Cerro Verde, Mrs. Magali Bardales, Corporate Legal Manager and Institutional Relationships Managers of Nexa Resources, and Mrs. Dominique Vieira, Chair of the Board of Perumin. I would like to invite to the podium Mrs. Christine Gibbs, Director of the Australia and Latin America Relationships Council, so she can share with us her presentation.
Thank you for having me here today, and it's great to be here. Now, as you can tell, I'm going to deliver my presentation in English, and if you have to sneak out to get a translator, please do that. I won't be offended. I'm very honored to take part in this program, a subject, equity and inclusion, which is near and dear to my heart. Perumin is also my favorite conference globally, but don't tell any of the Australians that. I've been here for many iterations, and it's always brilliantly executed, really in the true spirit of collaboration, and it captures those most important topics in our industry today. Plus, I find being in Arequipa a lot of fun. I've spent a lot of time in Peru, and I have many good friends here. And because of my close connections and affection for the company, or the country, sorry, some people joke that I'm actually half Peruvian. So it's great to be back in Peru, back to some place that feels like home. I'm going to start with a few personal reflections about my career. I've had almost a 40-year career in what has mainly been male-dominated industries, working in manufacturing, selling industrial hardware, honing new tech in overseas markets, and for almost 17 years working in mining. I was born in the US, but for the last 32 years, I've called Australia home. I started my career selling pumps, burners, boilers, and valves, and my main beat, or sales territory, was Latin America. People actually thought I was working for the CIA because it was easier for them to believe that I was with the CIA versus selling a boiler or burner to a factory in Guatemala or El Salvador. I've been to conferences of 600 people where the only other women there were serving food. And of course, there's been awkward moments when the chairs are hastily arranged, when people realize that I'm not a man. While we have come a long way and it's great to see what is happening in our industry, it's always a bit frustrating to come to conferences like this where we're still lamenting about what's holding women back, and we look at the statistics and we say we need to do better. Has gender held me back? Well, it's really hard to say what could have been better in a more ideal world, and I do consider myself lucky that I've had many strong supporters, mentors, and highly confident and competent people around me. But unfortunately, the statistics speak for themselves, and I can attest to situations where gender has impacted me, making my life more difficult and having to prove myself even more. And I found the more authority you have, the more senior you are, the situation is worse, as men, some men, should I say, tend to struggle celebrating women's accomplishments because of their own insecurity. But if there's anything that I can leave you with today, and one message, it's this. It's up to all of us to change things, to make our industry a better place to work, a place where everyone feels like they belong. So today, I'm going to leave you with some homework, some very small things that you can do where we can all work together towards a better industry. Now, I wear a couple different hats, and I'm here in the capacity of those various hats and my 17 years in the mining industry, of course. I'm a board member of the Council on Australia-Latin America Relations, and the Council is an advisory body to the Australian government to strengthen the relationship between Australia and Latin America. As you can see there, we have a number of objectives, and one of our key goals is gender equity and inclusion. And one of our key priorities areas is mining, mets, and resources. So on that council, I very much wear the mining industry hat, and of course, one of my passions is the equity and inclusion. For 11 years as well, I was also the CEO of AusMine, the world's largest association of its kind, representing the Australian mining, equipment, technology, and services sector. And it's with this experience and insight today that I speak. So while the title of my presentation includes the word supplier, I'm not going to use that term. It's very generic, and it could apply to any industry. In Australia, we call suppliers to miners the Mining Equipment Technology and Services Sector, or METS. And you can see the definition on the slide. The term is also used here in Peru and around Latin America. And the important thing is this term distinguishes firms who are supplying to mining. It gives them a voice. It defines their expertise and makes them a distinct community, and one that they can be proud of. As we know, and we heard this morning, 70% of the ecosystem is made up by suppliers. That means we have almost 5 times more suppliers than we do mining companies, or METs, should I say, than we do mining companies. And they employ 2 to 3 times more than miners do themselves. In Australia, the MET sector is a powerful force. It equates to about 4% of the Australian GDP, or $114 billion in annual revenue. The MET sector employs double what mining does, and it's made up of a wide range of high-tech, highly innovative companies in remote and regional locations. And we say it's the innovation engine of mining. Now, just like mining companies, the MET sector has a lot of work to do when it comes to gender equity. And the focus on equity and inclusion in our industry often doesn't discuss the MET sector. And as a result, there aren't a lot of statistics on it. However, a couple years ago, OSMINE did a small benchmarking study, which involved a small number of companies, but in-depth interviews, looking at diversity and inclusion in the MET sector, and also skills. Now, the key highlights from the study can be seen here. And the study shows what women are facing who work in METs, and it isn't good. The gender balance and indeed discrimination is there. So according to 85% of the women interviewed, they have faced gender-related discrimination or bias. 6% of female employees see themselves progressing to senior leadership roles within the MET sector. And that's not good when you're looking at career progression. And 90% of respondents said that there aren't enough female role models in the sector. While there's a strongly perceived understanding and commitment to diversity and inclusion, less than half the companies have formal diversity inclusion policies, and only about a third offer diversity and inclusion training. The sector is recognized as being male-dominated, and 88% of women view the sector as moderately inclusive. These are very sobering statistics indeed, particularly when globally there is a war for talent in the mining industry, and we really need to change perception when it comes to diversity. We need to do much better. Now, in preparation for this presentation, I also did some of my own research. And with only a small sample of leading global companies, I found that on average, 20% of the workforce is female in the MET sector. Females make up about 30% of senior executives, and METS boards have about 35% representation of women on average. Now, from a leadership perspective and looking across a broad range of publicly listed companies, METS companies reach the industry average, and that industry average is about 36% on boards. So METS businesses and large global players aren't doing badly, but we need to be better than average. As we know, however, the heart and soul of the METS sector, the suppliers, are the small and medium businesses, which really make up 70% of the companies that are operating in the METS sector, with only 10% being made up of those large global companies. And again, not a lot of statistics are available on the smaller companies, but what we know is this. And the first statistic is from a 2020 OSMINE survey, where only 12% of METS businesses were female-owned. When it comes to raising capitals, VCs, incubators, seeing deal flow, it's estimated that only about 10% of deals come from women-owned businesses. And when you look at some of the programs for incubators and startup, that number is only 1%. And that is not good. These are alarming statistics as we seek to foster a highly innovative startup community, and one where diversity and inclusion is built into the DNA. So what are we going to do about it? Big cultural shifts and structural shifts aren't going to happen in our industry quickly. We know that. So change needs to be inspired at the grassroots. And this is a perfect audience because you're here, because you care about today's and the future workforce. So you're already part of the change needed. So there are 3 things I think we could do much better to move the equity and inclusion dial. So first, we need to urgently change the narrative and tell our story better. Now, this isn't just a problem for Met's businesses, but it's a problem for the whole industry. Reports show that the next generation doesn't want to work for mining. In fact, perceptions of mining amongst young people is at an all-time low. And if you are a female, the perception is even worse. Now, the prevailing narrative, and you know this, around mining in Australia and globally has been shaped by such issues as environmental degradation, land disputes, community mistrust, unsafe working conditions, sexual harassment, and death. This perspective overshadows the sector's potential for transformation, for innovation, and positive community impact. The story of METS is a way we can shift this perception, taking the focus off the perceived low-tech commodity outputs to the high-tech inputs, from the pit to the computer, from the desolated landscape to the lights of an urban city. METS companies are focused on improving what is happening in mining: responsible resource extraction, rehabilitation, biodiversity, carbon neutrality, advances in technology. We need to illustrate that innovation is making miners safer, cleaner, and more efficient. And of course, tell the story about how vital mining is in the energy transformation. So a couple of things we can do together. First, think about the narrative or story you want to tell. Have you been involved in this exciting technology project? What services does your company provide that improve how mining is done? And what cool technologies have you deployed or been involved with or piloted? Tell those stories. Leverage digital. Influence. That's what it's all about today. You got to be an influencer. Share innovations, new tech, and your excitement about being involved in a forward-thinking industry to create a more modern view of mining. Next, make sure when you talk about mining that you talk about the whole value chain. Often METs aren't included in that story, but that's where the innovation happens, and that's where the majority of the community is around mining operations. Importantly as well, METs is the sustainable legacy of mining. As long after operations close, METs are still there, employing people, supporting the community, and servicing other industries. And finally, one of the best ways to demonstrate your narrative is providing people with the opportunity to have work experience. Provide internships. Let people know what a METS career looks like, and provide these opportunities to women. OSMINE runs a number of internship programs for females studying STEM, and we know once somebody does an internship program, 90% say they will pursue a career in METS. Next, we need to encourage female entrepreneurs and create the next generation of female-owned and led businesses. You know, I don't think of mining as particularly entrepreneurial. It's because we're always looking at the big, well-established companies. When OSMINE started 35 years ago, we had a number of founders that were members with and they were small and growing companies. Now these companies are worth billions of dollars. And the people who have established these companies are icons in the industry. And not to take anything away about what's been accomplished, but none of these businesses are female-owned. So we have some outstanding men, which is fantastic, but it's hard to find role models in female entrepreneurs. And we know that there is a vibrant startup community in mining right across the globe. And here in Peru, in fact, and I take my hat off to Pamela Antonelli and the Peru Mining Innovation Hub for running such an excellent program. So what can we do about this? We need to think about role models. Who are your role models? Who are those women-owned and led businesses that you can promote and talk about? As the saying goes, and this was said this morning, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So identify those champions, those pioneers, and tell their story. Now, networks are a great place to belong and find support, and WIM Peru is another great example of an organization that is really having impact, and we have the same in Australia and all over the world. And in that framework, however, we need to think about not only those people who are employed in mining companies and the met sector, but we need to encourage and inspire women to grow their own companies. So many of the METS companies have been started by people working in the mining industry who saw a problem and wanted to solve it, so they formed their own company. So how can we encourage more women to do that? How can we give them the power and confidence to go out there and start a business? And we also need to help promote those programs that help women access funding. This could be very early stage angel funding, VCs, or even an incubator or grants program. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this subject, but we saw that females make up only 10% of deal flow when it comes to mining technology, and that number needs to change. Encouraging women entrepreneurs requires a holistic approach that addresses financial, educational, cultural, and gender barriers. And by working together, we can create an environment where women not only start business, but thrive as leaders and innovators. Next, we need to get more women on boards in position of leadership where they can shift the culture and balance of power. Gender diversity in boardrooms leads to better governance, decision-making, organizational performance, and innovation. Despite progress in recent years, women remain underrepresented in many boards, both public and private. And numerous studies have shown that boards with greater diversity outperform those with limited representation of women. Diverse boards bring a wide range of perspectives, skills, experience, and lead with a robust decision-making framework and risk management. Now, I don't have any points under this particular heading because my message is simple. Go out there and get the experience you need to get on the board, if, of course, that is what you're interested in. The best way to do this is often to put your time into a not-for-profit, something you are passionate about. Join a committee, join a board, join a management team of a small not-for-profit who needs volunteers. You'll do a lot of heavy lifting, but you'll get immense experience and start you on your board journey. And I'll just share my early board experience, which came through being on the board of one of our local surf lifesaving clubs. And if anyone is interested in what surf lifesaving is, I can explain it later to you after the talk. Now, I've been on that board for over a decade, and I've held various positions. And surf lifesaving, it's deeply ingrained in the Australian culture, but it's steeped with tradition and masculinity. And in fact, women could not become surf lifesavers until 1984. And to some of us, that wasn't very long ago. And when I stood for president, there was actually a campaign against me saying that I wasn't a real lifesaver, which was code, well, she's not a man. It was confronting, but I had a lot of support, so I persisted. 7 years later, I am still the president, and in the club's 110-year history, I'm the second female president and one of the longest-serving presidents. And all those people who campaigned against me, well, I won their trust. They found out I wasn't a threat, and they have now become close friends. So it's really simple. We need to all be part of the change. And here's your homework. So first, what narrative do you want to create, and what positive story can you tell? Think about it, and go out there and tell that positive story. Who are your role models? There we go. Who are your role models, and how can you promote them? Think about those female-led and female-owned businesses. Let's celebrate them. Let's talk about them. Let's tell their stories. And finally, what are you passionate about? What can you devote your time to become involved and start your board journey? Think about these things. Be the change maker, and let's shift the dial on gender and make our industry the place where people want to work and the place where everyone belongs. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of Perumin.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation, Mrs. Gibbs. Now let's invite our moderator and panelists to start the panel. So over Mr. Carlos Castro, moderator Mr. Derek Cook, Mrs. Magali Bardales, and Mrs. Dominique Vieira. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Such a pleasure to have you here in this very important panel for all of us. First of all, I would like to thank Chris for her presentation. It was very inspiring. And let me tell you of all of the delegations that Peruvian delegations went to IMARC in Sydney, which is now we know it's not your favorite conference. I want to tell you that she is the one who allowed the Peruvian delegation to be very well positioned. Thank you very much for supporting Peruvians in Australia, especially female talent. Thanks for that. So after her presentation, I think that we have clear homework now, as Chris said. She has shared very specific data about the Australian industry on her own personal experience, which is very inspiring, certainly. But she has invited us to be part of change, to be agents for change. And that's part of the task, the homework we have here in this panel. We will try to identify what is change and what can we do to identify the challenge, the gap to be closed, and what's the starting point. So let's start. Let's just compare some numbers and concrete actions. We can start by saying that in Peru, we have a female participation in mining of around 7.6%. Or 8, let's say 7.6%. Chile, we were in the Tsunami dinner in Santiago, and they announced their official figures for female participation, 23%. 23.1. I'm sorry. Big round of applause for that 23.1%. And this was the result of a process. This was the result of a process. In Australia and in Canada, we have figures ranging around 22%. And please let me greet Mrs. Ambassador of Australia and Peru, Marie Reinhardt, has just given us news. Now the official figure is 22%. Great. Canada is slightly below. And as we said, Chile, 23, and Peru, 7.6. There is a gap. If we want to be part of a change, we need to know the gap we need to close. And having identified, in the case of Australia, first Chile, then Australia and Canada, we can see for sure that it's possible to close that gap. As Chris invited us to reflect, we have to know about the good practices and the good stories. And also it's important to know why should we do that? What motivates us to do so? I was going through a study of McKinsey from 2023 that says that companies with over 30% of female in leadership positions have 25% more likelihood of exceeding the financial performance of their peers in the industry. That's a good driver as well, and that invites us to be agents of change. We see real experience of this being possible. And on top of that, it is convenient, of course. We need to recognize that in Peru we have this trend, positive trend underway. Under the great leadership of women in mining in Peru, with her chairperson here. Oh, where is the chair? Okay, she's on her way. All right. We also have the leadership of Julia Torreblanca as the president of the Mining Society on Petrol and Energy. So there are many good examples, but we need to recognize that this is a slow process and we need to keep learning. If we get to close that gap, we are not only making progress in equity, we are also potentializing the competitiveness and innovation in the whole sector. That's the motor, the engine of change. So having said so, let's have a couple of rounds of Q&A with our extraordinary panel members. Let's start with Derek, who's closer to me. He's already been introduced. Derek, what's the current overview of female participation in Cerro Verde? And looking back, what do you think were the best improvements in the metrics? First of all, good morning. Okay, good afternoon already. Yes, for sure. Thanks. She's always correcting me. Thank you for that. And switching to English. Yes, so we are starting the homework already, and we have some progress there. But really, when we look at these numbers over here, we're looking at Cerro Verde, and we are on average compared to the numbers of peers, but there's lots of work to do. There's a lot of work done, and I'm very proud of my team behind these numbers, because let me exaggerate to emphasize my point, because when you start at zero, there is a lot of build-up and construction you have to perform in the foundation building to build a strategy and to implement it. And talking about all of the employees in Cerro Verde, we have less than 7%, but our number of women in main positions, funcionarios, they are at 14%, and there are numbers of women in managerial roles, and we are slightly above 20%. So that is also consistent with what we're seeing in Freeport. In Freeport is our headquarters, our main company, and I don't know if you've heard, but our CEO is Kathleen Kirk, and 3 out of the 5 people on the executive board are women, and 5 of the board directors are in Freeport are also women. So 5 out of 12. So there is movement. There is movement happening in Freeport. There are investment and diversity policies, and Cerro Verde they also has investment and diversity policies. Now, if we look at the numbers of the trainees, last year we had 29%, and there is an increase. Now it's 35%. And also with women in technical positions, technical trainees, the number keeps increasing. And that's because of the hard work behind the curtains, behind all of this. There are programs, as they know. We have the diversity and investment policy, the courses we have there, training, much more frequent annual training. And we also I've lost my train of thought, but my main point is that the program when we're looking at trainees, it's a blind process. We're not looking at names. We're just choosing the best candidate, and we choose that person. Now, the area that was the most challenging is, of course, in operations. When we need a haulage operator and we call for applications, we receive 300, let's say, applications for that job position. And many times there's 0 women applying for it. We've implemented a program in our impact area where we look only at women, we knock on their door, and we asked who's interested. Some of them, many of them don't even have driving licenses, so we had to offer a training for that. And we started with 16 women, and at the end there were 12 completing the program. Now we have 8 of them, but this program was implemented and was successful, so we have to think out of the box for this. And those programs, again, they take time, and that requires a lot of commitment and engagement. And later on, I'll speak about the program, and you said the grassroots word. I don't know how to translate that in Spanish, but a grassroots program is not only covering employees here at CB, but also in our community. And I'm saying that because we have 5,300 employees at CB and another 5,000 contractors. And do the maths. But the number of other indirect positions is that 10 to 1. So if we have 10,000 employees and contractors, that means there's 100,000 employees. And we don't have that number yet. Well, we don't have that number well defined. But within those 100,000, there are many women doing every type of work, whether they are in food catering, cooking, transportation, business of contractors working in our areas. So it's a strong impact on our direct area. And I'll tell you some more in a minute when we go into the contractor work and the work they are doing. And together we are not only increasing the number of women in mining directly, but we are also working on the indirect area. That's the big picture I wanted to share with you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Derek. Magali, let's continue with you. Question. How did indicators and percentages of female workers improve in Nexa Peru compared to 10 years before, and also in main positions, senior positions, and what's the gap to get to 2030? Thank you very much, Carlos, for your question, and thank you very much for this opportunity. First, I would like to say that in Nexa, we're very proud of showing the result we have obtained in the evolution of women participation in this decade. We have been able to double the number of female participation in our organization, going from 9.9% to almost 20%. And this is the result of commitment at different organizational levels. It has required joint work and commitment with business sustainability and industry sustainability. Our target to 2030 is to get 30% of female participation in all the organization, and also get to 30% in senior positions. We have 25% of women participation in lead positions, senior positions, and for us, it's been an achievement, and it's been a path. We've been learning along this path to get to this great result. Now, why are we doing this? As you were saying, Carlos, we are convinced, Nexa is convinced, that including more women in our organization will generate a more innovative organization, a more profitable organization, a safer organization, an organization where development and sustainable growth of the organization matters. And that's what we think women can contribute to in current Nexa and future Nexa. So we have been working hard with our vendors as well. We have implemented different actions. One of the main support points for our growth in the number of female employees in the organization is the creation of affinity groups. Affinity groups are the groups of our employees where they work jointly in different dimensions. Talking about gender, equity and age and different aspects that require reinforcement of that type of work in the organization. I mean, our employees receive the initiatives in the organization, and then those initiatives are proposed at high level of the organization for decision making and to put these initiatives into practice. And following that line, we've been working in different dimensions. And we have created a program called Empodera, Empower. That's an affinity group that reinforces the empowerment of women in Nexa. And then again, it has been a we are still on that journey. We are still on that journey, and we think we're missing. We have important achievements for sure, but there is still a long way to go. In Empodera, we have worked in several dimensions. We have worked on maternity, having safe infrastructure, psychologically speaking, and not only at infrastructure level, but also to provide psychological support to women. And we have also worked on signage. I mean, we have worked with our vendors as well, and with local communities, and also with our vendors. So that's been a transformation of our value chain. And there are some examples that I can give in the case of training and mentoring. We've worked and we have incorporated technology. And all together with Amazon Web Services, we have offered training cloud internet to 500 women of local communities in Brazil. And here in Peru, likewise, in the case of Cajamarquilla and Cerro Lindo in our operations, we've been able to offer training, technical training, aiming at improving the employability and the training of women and also their employability. And another dimension we work at the level of training, local training, is to look for entrepreneurship of women, meaning there should be an economic activity for women which is sustainable over time. Another aspect we've been working on is on maternity. We have achieved to extend maternity leave from 3 to 6 months in Nexa, and that has been product of the Empodera initiatives. We have created infrastructure with breastfeeding rooms and several types of infrastructure which is adequate for women, and also professional support, emotional support, psychological support, but also support areas for women, from women going through similar situations, for example, maternity or juggling job and personal life and family, and not to stop their professional development and not having to choose one or the other. Another aspect we've worked hard on is, which is essential for us, it's with our vendors, our suppliers. Our suppliers are strategic allies for this change. If we want to go for a real transformation, we have to work with our vendors, because at the end of the day, they are the important workforce, very important workforce in the organization. And along that line, we have worked in a complete programming, starting with active listening, collaborative work, due diligence in human rights with our suppliers, and many activities I would like to explain later on. But that's an overview of what I wanted to say, and we're very pleased. Nexa is very pleased of the progress so far. Of course, there is a long road ahead of us, but as a formal industry and as a mining sector, all the companies are on the same track. Thank you very much, Magali. Okay, over to you, Dominic. So we've already said the 23%, and from that perspective onwards, I would like to hear what barriers explain that 19% of female participation in suppliers versus 23.1%, and what are the 3 minimum standards that APREMIN would suggest to close this gap in a 2 years' time? Okay, thank you very much. Could you please go to slide number 3 so I can answer that question immediately? So, in Chile, 10 years ago, we had a similar percentage to the one you have in Peru. 10 years ago, 2014. Next slide, please. Nowadays, you will see slide 3. We have been the first country in the world in female participation. We were not even good at the beginning, and we want to be world champions in this, and we have been working hard consistently. And to make it, we had to change the vision we now have of mining. And let me give you one example, because I know this also happens in Peru. Many times when we think about mining, we're thinking about mining companies, but it happens It happens that mining is an industry that builds ports, roadways, that gives 3 out of 4 jobs. And as I hear, Christine, is the same all around the world. It's 70% approx. 3 out of 4 jobs. That means that if we, the vendors, the APEMIN, we are 19%, it is 4 times more to move 1 percentage point in female participation when we're doing this. Now, what did we understand in Chile? In Chile, we understood that change cannot come only based on good speeches or good intentions. No, it should come with clear strategies and policies. And I say this is important for vendors because it happens in Peru and Chile. Mining is the motor of economy. Suppliers are the motor of mining, the ones who bring technology, who generate knowledge, who bring innovation, and who can do the change, make the change in these numbers. They usually come from vendors, from suppliers, from communities that can develop a startup or small company that can turn into a large company like it happens in Australia and in many other countries. The same thing can happen here. But the first thing we need to do is to recognize the importance of suppliers in the industry chain. And whenever there are public policies drafted and strategies drafted, they need to be done in an agreement, public and private agreement with clear goals. Suppliers need to be at the table as peers, else we will have a biased vision of the problem. And many times from here there are solutions, comments, as Christine said, because we also have a variety of employment and jobs which is much more varied than the one the mining company can offer, because we're missing technicians, maintenance people. But looking at the long term, the employment of the future will probably be in robotics, AI, and we have to wonder if we are training women and employees for the future in those aspects, so we can have them as vendors. You asked about this. Some of the things we did was first to create the Ministry of Women, 10 years ago approx. And 2018, we signed an agreement, the first agreement between mining companies and suppliers, where we stated our objectives for inclusion. That's the picture of the first document that we signed. Then there was a draft passed for the conciliation of family life. That's not only for women, it's for women and men. And these are regulations that companies decide to abide by. But in the case of mining companies, they give you priority in case of a bidding, in case of similar prices. So that motivates suppliers to apply these things. And because we've also realized the benefit of having diverse teams. And on the other hand, we started this monitoring of figures. As I said, we have 23.1 versus suppliers, at least the ones we measure in APRIMIN, which is taken in Chile as the official figure, is 19%. That 19% is not comparable, as I said, in the supplying world. And then finally, not only gender, we created a national mining policy in 2050 that set certain objectives in several topics like sustainability and some other things. And there we said we wanted to have 35% of female participation in year 2050. And we are very positive there because we are only in 2025 and we've reached 23% from 10 years ago. So we are the only country which has been growing consistently. But this came hand in hand with all of these agreements we reached at public-private level with mining companies, where everyone was benefited from complying with a regulation and clear strategy and towards female inclusion.
Tan ricas.
How great it's been the shared time that we have and all the information that has been shared. And it's been that nice that we have run out of time almost. We don't have a time for a second round. And we will leave Luis with the task, with the homework already set, with the participation of our extraordinary panel members. I would request 1 minute or a little less final reflection, final thoughts for our people. Derek, yeah, talking about our providers, they follow the same rules and the same procedures in terms of policies to attract more women to the jobs and to guarantee that there is no harassment and those kind of things. So very rapidly, that's one of the things. But another thing that I really like is that you talked about the grassroots, the beginning and the programs. If we look at the WIMP program, for example, in the southern part, in 2017, there were 3 women. Now we have 660. And that is also seen in the numbers all over Peru in the Dream Builder programs that focus primarily in providing women with tools to start a business. This program that exists in more than 186 countries all over the world. Currently, out of the people that have participated there, 15% of them live here in Arequipa. And many of them think because of the work done by Cerro Verde and other people that have helped these women. And the STEM programs, sorry. Some few years ago, there were very few women in these programs. The last year, however, we had many women, and in Peru had actually 5 events and 3 contests, and 3 of them were won by these people from this program. Some people say that women do not like mining, but what we are seeing, based on the work that women are doing in WIM, they are the mentors. They are the ones that go knock at the door, talk to girls at schools, universities, at home, and also explaining things. And we can see that preference now where there are many people asking questions and wanting to get into mining. And that's actually the trend, something that I really like. I'm seeing that there are more women in school, after school, or in the university that want to join the mining sector. And that's where we see the curve going up little by little, but it's going up in the right direction. Thank you. I think we have a couple of minutes more, Magali, if you allow me. We will talk thinking about the future. Which do you consider are the challenges that we have in the sector regarding the commitments of companies with their providers to close these gender gaps? Thank you. Well, in principle, I believe that we need to recognize that we have made significant progress. In the industry, there is a commitment of the formal industry to continue growing in terms of plurality and inclusion. However, we need to recognize as well that this greater growth in terms of women participation has happened much more in the administrative or corporate areas. And the great challenge that we have as an industry is to grow the number of women in our mining operations, in the heart of our operations. And in that line, I believe that there is a very important aspect, which is that of retention and attraction of talent. I believe that undoubtedly women still we have to make decisions. Whether I decide to go for my professional development or I will go through to my mother's role or my role in a family. And what we need to do is actually to give that support in each organization. A psychological support, emotional support that will allow not to have this separation, for them to know that they can have both roles and do the two roles in synchrony, no problem. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is female employability. I think that we need to work as an industry as well in terms of employability, in terms of the training of women, so that they are prepared to be able to deal with different works in the industry. The STEM education for women, that's key, as we have mentioned. And finally, to have prepared women to deal with any challenge that they might have in an industry, without having to without the decision needing to be that complex. There we have to work more and more with local employment. We need to look for training for women, not only for work in the operation, but also in terms of entrepreneurship for and economic sustainability. And the challenges, well, I don't think that they will stay there. They're only their broader challenges, social challenges, cultural challenges related to gender violence, education. I mean, how many women have to leave schools in our rural areas because simply they have to deal with house chores, or teen pregnancy as well, a problem that it's a reality in our country, unfortunately. So there's still so much to do. I think that the challenges are important, and for that, it is important to work in collaboration with our providers. As I said, the heart of our labor force are providers, and I think that together with them we can change and we can help to close these gaps and to do some joint work between the state, the civil society, the mining companies, our vendors, to finally get to that great objective that we have, which is to approach women to the industry, and that will allow us to have a sustainable industry in time. Thank you. Thank you, Magali. Thank you, Magali. Dominic, Chile achieves same rates in new hirings. What mechanisms will allow the women to obtain these high mechanisms without sacrificing productivity? Well, the first thing that I want to mention is that some years ago I was enemy of the quotas and the rates, but many times that didn't work to us, and we had to set concrete targets. Some providers and the mining companies did this as well. We have the example of BHP, for example, that achieved more than 45% of female participation because they proposed to have parity in the staffing. And sometimes in industry, we do not find women because we have less women available in the industry than the quotas that we are setting. And sometimes we fight for women in the labor force. But what is important here, together with measuring us and generating this change, is to understand that the industry is a whole thing, and we need to generate a multiplying effect. We know that the society, when you educate a woman, when you give employment to a woman, that has a multiplying effect in their children and in their families and the communities where she lives. This also happens with the providers. Many times, to be able to provide more employment, we need to generate supplier development programs at the local or international level, many times to bring them. One message that I would like to leave you with is that many times, especially for smallest companies as well as for the workers, they look for companies that will allow them to develop. For a company to do this leap forward, many times they have to make an agreement or work together with a company that is in a different country. What also happens is that many people think that to work in the mining sector, we need to knock at the door of the mining companies. Well, many times it's easier to knock at the door of the providers, and this includes employability, innovation, and many other things, because evidently when you are in the production, that was your question, you are more risk adverse, because risk means a higher economic risk. So you are more adverse, for example, to assuming new technologies, and that brings with it many other things, like, for example, the different type of activities. We know that working in a mine company has a high family cost, but if you work through a third company, you can work, at least in Chile, we have remote operations, we have home office, we can work from home. So there are many variabilities and flexible employment that we can generate hand in hand with mining. But for that, we have to set objectives, concrete objectives, providers and miners, and start working to comply with this. Thank you. Well, I think that the presentation of the whole panel and our speaker give us much more information. Thank you for sharing knowledge, experiences. I think that we will leave this room with lots of information to take that role of agents of change. We have some homework to do at home. I hope that we all feel more motivated to start implementing more actions to reduce the gender gap, and we will now work with the Excellence Prize of Perumin for Inclusion and Excellence. Thank you very much to you all. Thank you to the participation of our moderator and the panel members, and we would like to invite you all to the center stage for the institutional photo. Mr. Gibbs, please join us with for the photo. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
All right, thank you very much. So we kindly invite you to take a seat so we can continue with the forum. So, thank you very much. Have a seat. We kindly invite you to take a seat. We're going to start the next block. Programs that have changed lives. Testimonies. So to do so, we're going to invite our moderator, Mr. Daniel Basigalupo, General Director for Latin America, Spanish-speaking Latin America, Huesco. And our panel members, Mrs. Angie Espinosa, Driller of Geotech, Mrs. María Eugenia Castillo of the program Mujeres Mágicas from MINEM, and then Mrs. Laura Taboada from the program Umali Warmi from Women in Mining Peru and Mujer Roca, and Mrs. Anabel Fernandez, Operator of Mine Development of Anglo American. Go ahead, please. All right, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'm very happy to bring diversity in the panel because I'm the only man here, and hopefully this is the way it will be in the future. And I really want to congratulate the organization and the Institute and all of the organizations that make this panel possible, and to all of you who are the main topic of conversation today. So, my first question is this. And apologies that I assume that you know what happened with all of our panel members. They all went through extraordinary programs like Mujeres Roca, Malik Warmi, and Mujeres Mágicas, and some other processes that empower the talent, the natural talent and gained talent of professionals in the sector. So having said so, my question is, what changes did you have in your professional life after being trained in these programs? Let's start with you, Angie. So, what changes did you have in your professional life after going through the program you attended? All right, good afternoon, everyone. So over these 2 years and a half I've been working for Geotech, they opened the doors to me. and also with Minera Las Bambas. They released a program for women drillers, and over 2 years and a half approx, now I'm an employee. I've turned into a drill rig operator women. So I've gone through many changes in my life. I've been able to lead. I've been able to lead a drill platform. I've been able to be better and to set goals and objectives for myself. What about you, María Eugenia? Good afternoon. I would like to talk about my experience with Mujeres Mágicas. I participated in a mining training period. I was invited there, and I was surprised because in my district, all the activity is connected to farming. Of course, there is mining, but it's mostly agricultural work. So we didn't think women being part of mining, we thought that was for men. That's what we said. But then I went to this training period, which was really nice, very beneficial. And after that, Mujeres Mágicas program contacted me, and they coordinated to do a training in our district. So I had to go. I supported them, and I invited many women because it was a program for women. There were men who wanted to attend, but it was only for women. So then at the beginning they say, "Hey, María Eugenia, how's this going?" There were topics related to mining, and it was not that attractive. It was not a good match, I thought. Well, we offered the first talk, half a day. There was not much attendance. Yeah, there were some women present there, but not many. Not as many as we expected. But all surprise, after lunch, we had a full auditorium. And next day, the same thing. So, what happened after this? Just to summarize, it's a long story because it was a process. So, women in my district started to empower themselves. Thanks to the talks we received there, we knew that we were not only born to be at home and raising our kids and being in the farmland, and we were born for many more things. And nowadays, I am a leader of my community I've been a leader for a long time. And I'm pleased to see that many women are following that path. Now they are part of directive teams or committees and defense fronts. And now there is a group to dialogue with mining, with Jinsao mining, to look after a plan for a framework where women, 80% of that committee is made out of women. So there we see the result and the change that Mujeres Mágicas has brought about in my community. We keep receiving talks, we keep receiving training via WhatsApp. There's a WhatsApp group, and there is national participation. And that's something enriching because we are all participating, we are all learning, we already know what mining is and what we should do, what we shouldn't do, how to complain. Because in the past, we didn't even think about it, and we didn't think we were able to do it. I think that these programs like Mujeres Mágicas and Mining Integration, they should continue. They should continue because for us as women, and I'm talking about my district and personally, it has enriched us. It has made us grow as women. It has made us grown as women. Yeah, we're not submissive anymore, and we are going to be submissive. We're not submissive anymore, and now we are participating in the development of our district. And that's my experience with Mujeres Mágicas. And we are very, very thankful for that. Well, very powerful message.
Laura, tell us, what was your experience? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Laura Taboada. Currently, I'm a junior engineer at Cerro Verde Mining Society, and I have been scholar of the Majiwarmi and Mujeres Roca program. A little bit of my background, I wanted to mention that I'm from Apurímac. I've been living in Arequipa for more than 3 years already, and definitely those programs have been a break-even point in my life, a point of change, because as civil engineer, I was not planning to devote to the mining sector. However, my first approach to mining was the Umayik-Bormi program, which definitely was set a complete difference in my professional career. This allowed me to get to know a group, a network of professionals that are always there for you, to support you, to help you, not only the program or during the program, but after the program is finished. This has allowed me to get inspired and continue with all the initiatives that WIN has, like Kurong Nuñaiki and more programs. Then after that, I have also decided to apply to new projects. For example, now I'm a scholar of the Perumin scholarship this year in its first edition, and Mujeres Roca that came about when I was already in Cerro Verde. This program has allowed me to continue in my work, leading and working in teams in my work, and it has also helped me to continue connecting with other people. I think that the great contribution they have made in my career is to speed up things that I might have learned in 5-10 years. I managed to learn them thanks to the program in these few years. This has been very fruitful for me. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Very powerful as well. And finally, Annabelle, share with us your experience, please. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Anabel Fernandez. I'm from Moquegua, very proudly of being from Moquegua. My experience started in 2021. I mean, my personal life, in my personal life, I never thought about mining, never at all. At that time, I was studying to be an accountant. However, the company Anglo American launched at that time a training program for women from Moquegua and Minskin mining trucks. And the opportunity came suddenly to me, and they said, you know, there is this opportunity. And maybe at that point I was thinking I have a target that is to be an accountant. That's what I want to do. But at that point it was a decision that I made, but it was very important. I said, yes, let's go. I can do this. And that's how I started learning many new things. Each task, each day, it was something new for me, something challenging. At that time, the company continued giving us training. They were also with us, maintaining their trust in us, commitment, following up on our progress. And today I can thank because that possibility, the trust they had in me, opened many doors for me to be trained in other teams, because I work in many areas, front loader, mining areas. I have many different types of training. That would be my experience. Thank you, Annabelle. Well, definitely, first of all, whoever says that mining doesn't provide opportunities, I mean, here it is clear that they are confused, right? Second, they have shown, or you have shown, that women can do everything even better than men in many of the things, I'm sure. And they are a clear example. Nobody would have thought, 20 years ago or a little bit more, that a woman would be a driller no? Or a machinery operator, or that would be doing mine planning or even less, leading conversations and negotiations with transnational mining companies of worth billions of dollars. So definitely the knowledge that these programs have given us, I think it has empowered. I mean, not only the presence of women and the role of women, but it has also allowed to decentralize these situations in the country. So I congratulate you on that. My second question is focused on that you got. What skills? Let's think about 2 or 3 skills or competencies that, thanks to these programs in which you participated, you were able to acquire them rapidly or develop it rapidly, and yet you might have not been able to obtain in such a short time without the programs. Let's think about 2 or 3. Let's start with you, Angie.
So the skill I developed was this. I'm an objective person. I'm an objective person who's very clear about her goals, and if a man was leading a drilling platform, why not a woman? So I felt capable, and I have the qualities and the skills to face any problem that can happen in any drilling platform in any area, because women are empowered to go ahead, to lead, and I want to say that limits are only set by yourself. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, Maria Eugenia, please tell us. Let's think about 2 skills. Okay, in my case, I always had the skill of leading, managing masses. But when you receive the type of training we have received in Mujeres Mágicas, you get even more empowered. You can act better with more knowledge. Who was going to tell me that we were going to be sitting in front of a mining company to claim and tell them, look at this is like this is like that, this is what we want? We would never think about this, or never thought. But now, like me, there are women doing this. We are doing this. As my colleague here says, women, she is the only one who can set limits for herself, because no man or no other person will do that. That depends on us, like women. We know we can be over here, and that depends on us. And we know we will make it. Fantastic. Thanks, Maria Eugenia. Super empowering. Okay, Laura, over to you. In my case, I think that definitely the confidence, having a strategic vision of your life according to your purpose, this is something attainable through experience and many years. Thanks to these programs, I've been able to have my purpose much more clearer, to define it and trace a pathway. And something they always repeat as young professionals, we don't have this well designed. So thanks to all of the mentors I had, because I'm here thanks to them, thanks to the opportunities I've been given, and all the mentoring they've given me. So I'm very, very thankful to these programs, because they made me learn how to approach a leader in the sector. Something university does not teach you. I've studied at Universidad Nacional de Cusco, and soft skills are not always addressed. That's something that it's left aside. And definitely those programs do not only train you in the technical part, but also they train you in soft skills. They teach you about the step-by-step with the specialist people. So definitely you are totally empowered with no limits and with a support network which is very large. So, Annabelle, what about you? What are the skills? What skills do you think these programs helped you develop? Well, these programs basically helped me to be more decisive in my decision making, in my confidence, in my own self-confidence, to assume new challenges and the opportunities I have had. So, to develop myself on this, we know this is very broad and very competitive. So it also requires discipline, effort, and consistency. And I feel capable of doing this and assuming on many other challenges that can appear in the short or long term. That's fabulous. Thanks. And then again, I'm surprised. I'm surprised of everything generated by these programs and how they touch lives differently. And the skills, as you said, Laura, something that would have taken years to learn. They summarized all of this in some months or 1 year of learning. And I imagine that for many people, more than years of learning, those skills are skills that they wouldn't have been able to explore otherwise. So I take from this leadership, soft skills, negotiation capacity, and finally, discipline and clear objectives, among many other things that you've learned from these programs. Now, talking as a representative of mining vendors, mining suppliers, I would like you, as part of your vision, as part of participants or ex-participants of the program, what would you recommend so we can contribute to the acceleration of these programs and the massification of these programs? So, let's start with Annabelle. Annabelle, please tell me, what's your take on this? Well, in this case, companies could opt and direct more resources to these programs involving women inclusion. Not only women inclusion, but also young people inclusion. There could be agreements with institutions involving innovative methodologies where we can get to see experiences, practical and theoretical experiences and real experiences where this entity develops. And also inclusion, gender inclusion through policies for women and men. All right, and Laura, what about you? What do you think about it? Well, I think that the role of companies, not only mining companies but vendors, is a key role. It is very important for the continuity of these programs. Definitely, without the support of these companies, the programs I was part of would not have been possible. So the support of companies to those programs is essential. Thanks to them, we can have many opportunities. We can have all. I'm honored to share this panel. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been the case. So definitely, these programs promote a change in lives because it's not only us. There are families behind us, our children in some cases. So this has an impact on our society. So I think that the most important thing is for companies to give continuity to these programs. That's it. Thank you very much. Mario Eugenia, over to you. So we see mining companies in a friendly manner, but not only mining companies, but their vendors. They should bet on development and the development of a district. For our case, we know that mining brings development, progress, and buildings and constructions and facilities, but they should also develop. They should also support intellectual development of young people through training, through getting a scholarship for young people. In my district, there are lots of young people that they don't have the possibility of studying outside our community, but we have a technological institute for agriculture only. So on that hand, they could by help us by providing some other type of training connected to mining, because as Jigsaw is going to start, is a large mining company. How can we participate or ask for jobs or to be taken into account if we are not trained, if we do not have the tools to learn how to operate a machinery like she did, or any other topic connected to mining? So I think that companies and vendors should keep supporting this type of programs so we can go ahead and just an example of this. I give faith that women in my district are now empowered. I would have loved you to see them how they are now and how they were before. That's all thanks to Mr. Marco, to Marco who thought of us, thought about us with his program of Mujeres Mágicas. And I would like this to continue. I would like companies and vendors keep supporting these type of programs nationally because this is very beneficial. So these programs should not be left aside. They should involve women. And companies like Geotech, they have supported me. They have given me the necessary support for me to meet my goals. There should be more opportunities, more training provided. And we know that women will be able to lead this sector or any other sector. We're already doing so. So we are empowered for any sector. All right, thanks, Angie. So what these programs bring, and definitely the role of the company or the role of the mining company, of the contractor company, is vital in the development of our country. And then again, the one who thinks differently might be confused. And you're totally clear examples of investing, the results of investing in programs and mining empowerment programs for education, for improving skills. We will get great professionals. We will have a larger pool of professional people that we can employ, we can use. And as I said in the past panel in Chile, they said at some point they do not get women to reach their quotas. And I hope that soon we can reach our quotas. And it should be difficult now because everyone should already be employed and we have to train more women to get there. I think we have 3 minutes to go. So just to wrap it up in 30 seconds each, I kindly ask you, but I know it's out of the script of questions, but I think we have to take the advantage of this opportunity. Which piece of advice would you give to women who are doubtful about joining a program? What would you tell them? What would you tell those young women or professionals or women in general who have this doubt about taking one step ahead? Angie, what about you? Angie says, so I was able to achieve that with effort and with perseverance. I'm sure they can also make it. They will be able to lead any field. So then, we women, we are destined, as I said a minute ago, we're destined to lead. Okay. I would tell them, don't be afraid. Believe in yourself. Trust yourself. Don't hear people saying, hey, you will not be able. No, that's a lie. We can. Women can go for this and for much more. It all depends on us. I come from a house of only women, and I would say, as my mom says, you have no limits, no boundaries. The world is from here onwards. There is no career only for women or only for men. Do what you like and do what you feel passionate about. So my advice would be, do not let yourselves be constrained by stereotypes or comments. I've always said that every day there is a new opportunity for getting better, and if that's a matter of opening new doors in our professional and personal development, go ahead, go for it. So the message, I feel carried away, I feel excited. I'm really, really excited, not because I'm nervous, but because this is an exciting topic. I think that you connect your experiences connect differently. I'm sure the experience of an expert, but you are the product of what experts are talking about. So I really congratulate you. I encourage you to pursue your professional career and participate in as many programs as you can, and for you to be the ambassadors of these programs. So thank you very much for your participation. It's been an honor to me to be sharing this space with you, and now I invite you all, to all of the attendees, to include in your roles the grain of sand, this extra effort to make all these programs sustainable and continue over time. Hopefully, it should be part of business as usual, as our friends say in North America. So, thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you. Thank you very much for the excellent participation of our moderator and panel members, and we kindly invite you to the stage for the picture.
Gracias a todos. Vamos a tomarnos un descanso hasta las 5 de la tarde, donde volveremos con la presentación del sello Perumin a la excelencia en equidad de género. Nos reencontramos en minutos. Gracias. Vamos a continuar el foro.
We will continue with the forum. Now, I would like to invite Mrs. Karina Ceballos, President of the Equity and Inclusion Forum of Perumin 37, who will present the Perumin Seal of Excellence in Gender Equality. Please, you have the floor. Thank you, Rocio. If we can go to the presentation, please. Next slide, please. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and those of you who are watching us in the streaming. I would like to share with you that today we are giving one first step forward, a historical one, with the first edition of the Perumin Seal of Excellence to Gender Equity, which is a recognition that distinguishes companies committed with equity and opens the pathway to a collective transformation in our industry. Why do we think about this seal? Because it was created with a triple purpose, actually, which is based on recognizing pioneer companies from all the ecosystem, not only mining companies, vendors, academia, everybody participating in the mining ecosystem. So we would like to recognize these pioneering companies, visualize specific results, and especially promote more actors to join us from the Peruvian mining sector to promote equity. It is critical to be able to identify these good practices because the whole purpose of the Equity Forum of this year, of this edition of Perumin, is to go from reflection to action. We have already debated many times that we have a low percentage, that we need to do many things. Well, in this forum, we've been talking since the morning about all the things that have given good results and that can be replicable, just be replicable at any setting, government, mining, businesses, vendors. We have even seen testimonies of people that have been benefited by these programs, by these initiatives that give results to close the gender gap. We are not talking about accessory things. Equity is a factor of equity and sustainability. The people that include this in their management will lead the future of mining, not only mining companies, but also vendors. Why is it necessary to have a seal to the excellence in gender equity? Because we need to recognize them and all that I have just said, but also because we need to make visible the companies that are already doing this. We do not have a regulatory framework that indicates we need to do this as a minimum and then whatever, something better if you want. There's nothing like that. So let's start with a standard, a minimum standard, which is what we are presenting today. And from that, we should have a framework of reference. Next slide, please. This seal does not create new standards. It is not that we have created something new that will satisfy the mining sector. No, we have taken existing standards, UN standards, the Global Reporting Initiative, the ISO standard. This seal doesn't create new standards. It gets inspiration from international frameworks that already exist and that have shown good results. The Principle for Empowerment of Women, United Nations to promote gender equity, female leadership, the development objectives of the Sustainable Development Objective of the UN, well, the ODS, SDGs 5 and 8 and 10, to strengthen alliances. Why it is important to strengthen alliances and partnership? We have heard a lot about the strategic partner. Well, companies on their own alone cannot do sustainable mining. It is impossible. We are in an ecosystem in which the participation of the vendors and the ecosystem is vital. And we need to also have an active decision, an active pronouncement. The ratio is 3 to 1. 3 direct employment of inventors, for one, that it's non-direct, according to the statistics of the MINEM, the Ministry of Mining, is 70% of direct employments in the vendors, in the contractors, versus 30% of direct employments in the mining companies. So if the vendors, if the service businesses, the service providers, the academia do not also focus in having a sustainable mining and including everybody, it is not possible. So SDG 17 is fundamental because of that. The global initiative of the Global Reporting Initiative, another standard that we have used as a reference, is used to report progress made in diversity, salary gap, participation of women at different levels. And we do also have the ISO. We all know the ISO standards, in this case, social responsibility, and the EDGE certification, economic benefits through gender equity, which evaluates contracting and balance between personal and work life and inclusiveness. We have taken all these references then to make them the basis to evaluate policies, results, practices, to grant the companies that already have standards like this implemented in their institutions and distinguish them by providing the seal to the excellence in gender equity because of their good practices. Next slide, please. So the process was a lengthy process that got extended because companies were asking for more time to submit their applications. And it was basically in convening we made an open and free convene. There were no obstacles like you had to pay a fee or you had to be partner of whatever. No, any company in the mining ecosystem could apply. We reviewed their initial documentation. We had an evaluation committee that helped us review the applications. We gave feedback to the companies. Those companies sent additional evidence if they had whatever they had, and then we had a final result. And well, this seal will be granted on the day of on Friday, the closure day. So I can show you what happened. We had 39 applicants, and out of these 39 applicants, 24 were distinguished with the seal. The response exceeded our expectations, really, because we know of previous attempts in other organizations of the sector of gathering information in an organized manner, and the response has always been very low. 39, it's a good number of companies that applied for this seal. And this result showed us that the gender equity is already part of the agenda in the mining sector and its value chain in some companies. But now, if I tell you that we invited 420 companies to apply, then the approach changes because from 420 only to 39 applied. So, well, there we kind of realize that there's still a long way to go. These 39 have some good practices, but we do not reach excellent in all of them. Excellent, 24 of them are excellent. And we're talking not only about mining companies, but we are actually talking as well about vendors. And with the vendors, we have companies that belong to the academia, even very, very small companies, but which have started from gender parity. And all their policies, since they started, were focused on always having equity. That indicates us that we do not need a mega budget for this or to have gender equity or think about gender equity. We can start well with this. Next one. And well, with all this information that we have received and with all the good practices that we have found in the companies that have obtained this seal, we will create the first manual of good practices in gender equity as one of the deliverables of Perumin 37. And this This manual, we want it to be a collective legacy, a dynamic, alive document in constant evolution that will allow more organizations to be inspired to join us and to increase their standards. Why? Because we do not need to reinvent the wheel for this. We have found a huge number of good practices. Some of them are costly, but many of them are not costly, are easily to implement. But we need to this to come from the managers, the general managers and directors of the company so that they realize the importance of this, and besides also to demystify the fact that these programs are expensive. This manual is going to be useful so that little by little companies can take this as a guide and they will be able to join these good practices. Now we're celebrating 24 companies, but we want to have more and more companies celebrated in the future. Next one, please. Today we celebrate again a recognition, but what we are looking for is a collective transformation. We are an ecosystem. Gender equity is not a dream for tomorrow. It's a commitment that we are taking today for a more inclusive, fairer, and more sustainable mining. We really appreciate all the companies that joined this process because it was a difficult process. It was not a simple application. They had to work strongly to gather the data, sending their evidence, formalizing some processes that they had implemented, but that didn't have a document behind. It's been, in other words, a very thorough and very professional work, really. Those of you who have applied and that have submitted your full files and will obtain the seal, you are the protagonists of change, and you will be recognized as such. And you are those that are giving us the material for us to be able to create this manual. And well, let's continue building this path together, and let's see each other in the next edition of Perumin. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for the participation of Mrs. Karina Ceballos, and we kindly invite Mr. Seti Gavilan for the closing remarks. Let me introduce Seti. He is a mining engineer graduate from Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos. He holds a master's degree in science and mining engineering, geology, and geophysics by the University of Arizona, and also an executive master's degree in business administration by the Universidad of Francisco de Victoria University. And he holds a master's degree in development and national defense for the Center of CAE. He has over 30 years of experience in mining industry, developing and operating projects, world-class mining projects, and he currently performs as the Director of Operations for Glencore Copper Assets in Peru. He has held several positions in different levels in Apial Capital Advisory, MMG Las Bambas, Nexa Resources, Yamana Gold, Torex Gold, Barrick Gold in Peru, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Canada, and the US. So over to you, Mr. Gavilano. Good afternoon. We're just closing the afternoon, which was a long day but very beneficial. And for me, it's such an honor to give the closing remarks and to recap some of the conclusions reached during this forum. So we are reaching the end of a day that gives us valuable reflection, especially renewed commitment to equity and inclusion in our sector. Over this day, we have been listening to diverse voices, entrepreneurial leaders, company representative, diplomatic representative, executives, and vendors and professionals that from their own experience they've been able to show that equity is not an ideal. It's not a faraway ideal, but a possible pathway, urgent pathway and necessary pathway. So, about the conclusions, just summarizing what we've seen today, let's start by saying this. Australia, Canada, Chile, and the UK have shown us progress and learnings regarding gender equity. in reduction of salary gaps, the promotion of technological careers for women, and all of these have been replicated in Peru. This way, our companies also turn into benchmarks to promote a culture of equity and gender. Second, inclusion of more women in the sector does not only promote equality, but it also promotes productivity, innovation, and sustainable development of this sector. This forum has concluded that the public sector and the private sector should execute policies and measures to face problems related to violence, harassment in mining by creating safe and inclusive spaces for women's development. I'm proud to say that we have seen several presenters showing that many companies like BHP, out of 9% of female representation, that number has now grown over 40% in very few years. And in fact, there is a growth, pending growth, and a commitment from BHP, just to give an example. This forum has put in evidence that success was not casual, but the result of intentional corporate strategies, such as the creation of the training program and development program focusing on women. And then finally, I have to say that even though much progress has been made, the work is not done, it's not over. It will end when diversity is no longer something to debate about, but a reality integrated and valued by everyone in our industry. And as said, the challenge is to generate a change of consciousness and awareness, a cultural change in men and women. And to do that, we have to create personal development indicators for women of the company to contribute to women's empowerment that should feel comfortable when taking on new leadership roles. So let me please have a parenthesis here to tell you about my own experience over these 30 years in the industry. And I'm going to add 5 more of my studies, so university studies. Here in our country, when I started university, no women was allowed in mining, not even one. They were not allowed to get into a pit. Workers themselves would prohibit women from entering pits because they would bring bad luck or cause accidents. It's true that Peru has almost 8%, 7.6% of participation to be exact on this industry. These 35 years, a huge progress has been made. Not enough, for sure, not enough, but huge progress has been made. And when you understand a bit the distribution of the 7.6%, that's very interesting because we have broader participation in directive levels. We have general managers, CEOs in the industry, which are very important and relevant and because of their own merit. And most of managerial teams, we have percentages reaching 30-40% with no difficulty. When we go into more technical levels, but also managerial levels, we're talking about 20%. But when we reach to the base labor force, the operational part, that's where we have some issues. So it's an inverted pyramid. However, it's the other way around. The number of people in the base, in the first row of production, that's where we have the most people. And as we said during these conclusions, things doesn't happen out of coincidence. Things do not happen out of coincidence. Industry should take deliberate action to generate equity, the one we're going for, and the inclusion we're going after. And analyzing the problem, if the large percentage of workers and employees are in operational levels, therefore, it's up to us to create the conditions for this to happen. Today, they've talked about this in many panels. For example, Magali Bardales was talking about all of the Nexa efforts, and I've worked in Nexa for 2 years. So in fact, equity and inclusion, there is something very, very strong. Even LGTB, it's not only for women, and also for people with disabilities. So companies need to create these conditions to have more participation, more inclusivity. Just to give an example, to highlight an example, operations in remote campsites do not benefit women's participation, for sure. We have opportunities not in our communities, neighboring communities, and women can go back to their homes every day. Because there's also this family life, there is this children's lives, daughters' lives. And we have to do all of our effort to facilitate. And that's precisely what we call as a deliberate effort from the industry to do so. Another example I could cite is connected to technology. Technology is a tool, an inclusion tool, which is a fantastic tool for inclusion, for everything. Not only because I can do remote work or in a computer or intellectual work related to production, but also technology for maintenance purposes, to have special tools that do not need me to carry 20 or 30 kilos, which are the limits for weight lifting for our maintenance operators. We can have robots and mechanical devices that can allow people perform all of their tasks. So technology in the future will be something like a key factor, like an inclusivity tool. And that only happens through a deliberate effort of the industry to promote this. But we have made progress. I know we have made progress. I know it's a little bit, but progress has been made. Compared to what I remember when I was a student at university, to what I see nowadays, talking about the number of participation of women in mining engineer, metallurgical engineer, the technical core of mining. But also, I also have to say that in a mining company, in a mining organization, the ecosystem is way broader. I would say that not more than 20% of our labor, whether technical or operational, is connected to production. We also have administration, finances, environment, archaeology, communication, legal as well. We have a huge number of professions which are necessary and essential for developing the industry. And this is not part of the hard core, operational core. There are many opportunities, and I think that numbers and examples like the ones we saw from Chile show that this is possible without sacrificing production, without sacrificing safety and tearing apart those paradigms. So just before I wrap this up, this morning we attended the talk of the former President Mauricio Macri. And at the end of the panel, there was a very interesting question about women. And yes, in his experience, he says, Italian family, male chauvinism, all along his family, and then working as a civil engineer, working in the automotive industry. So those are the industries where there is no female presence mostly. Football club, the president from Boca Junior, until he reached the government level, and when he got to that level, he saw a massive presence of women. And he confesses he didn't know how to act, how to behave. But to make the story short, at the end he said that over 40% of his cabinet when he was a president, when he was made out of women, and his party, the majority was also made up of women participating in political life, following this special characteristic of women: commitment, commitment. And he gives an example of a person he wanted to promote as a minister, but who was pregnant. And she told him, well, I cannot. Jose, I'll wait for you. Well, okay, when? By this date. But then she came back before that date. So that shows the commitment of a woman with things that make her grow and where she feels useful and engaged. So I think there are many stories that we've heard in Perumin in different forms, not only this one, about inclusivity, equity, and inclusion. And I think we can highlight all of those and feel proud of them. But homework continues. We still have a long way ahead of us. And now to wrap it up, it is clear that talking about equity is not referring to something accessory. It's talking about an essential condition for the growth of our industry and of our country. Data is sound. In Peru, women represent 8% of the workforce in mining. And that, added to the salary gaps and limitations in leadership positions and inequality in access to opportunities, that reality shows how much long road we have what a long road we have ahead of us and why this forum is necessary. But there are also some reasons for hope. More companies are taking on concrete commitments by implementing inclusive policies and by opening spaces where diversity is translated into innovation, sustainability, and competitiveness. Of the 40 companies applying to Perumin seal, after this excellent presentation, that's a proof that there is this increasing willingness to accelerate this change. Today, we are wrapping up this forum with a certainty that equity and inclusion are not achieved through speeches, but through facts. Every policy implemented, with every door opening and with every gap we get to close, by doing that, we are building the mining we want. A fairer, a more humane and more representative mining. Do not take only ideas from this. Take commitments, because today we've proven that equity and inclusion are not only principles but motors for change. I'm convinced that if we maintain this boost, we will be able to construct stronger, more innovative, and more humane mining for everyone. Thank you very much. We thank for your remarks, and we invite Karina Ceballos to come to the center of the stage for a picture. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and have a very good afternoon.